They tell us Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. They tell us Jack Ruby was just an emotionally distraught patriot. They tell us that Israel, our greatest ally, had nothing to do with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And they expect us to believe it. Who is they, though?
I think they've been extremely unfair to you.
Who is they, though?
If there's one thing we know for sure, it's that official narratives are usually just sanitized lies for public consumption. And when it comes to John F. Kennedy's assassination, every thread pulled leads back to the same inconvenient truth. Israel had the motive, the means, and the opportunity to eliminate Kennedy, and the greatest incentive of all to see him dead. John F. Kennedy was not just another politician who occasionally voiced mild concerns over Israel's actions. He was actively standing in the way of their most critical objective, nuclear weapons. In the early 1960s, Kennedy pressured Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion to open the Dimona nuclear reactor for United States inspections. Ben-Gurion refused. Kennedy persisted, sending an ultimatum in June 1963, making it clear that failure to comply could lead to a cutoff of United States support. Ben-Gurion's response? He abruptly resigned. That is right. Just one day after Kennedy's letter was delivered to the United States Embassy in Tel Aviv, Ben-Gurion stepped down, citing personal reasons. How convenient. Almost as if he knew a more favorable administration would soon be in power. And indeed, when Kennedy was gunned down just months later, the entire dynamic shifted. Lyndon B. Johnson, Kennedy's replacement, reversed course immediately. He eased nuclear scrutiny on Israel, ignored Kennedy's insistence on inspections, and ushered in the era of unquestioned United States-Israel cooperation. Within a few years, Israel had nuclear weapons, something Kennedy was determined to prevent. So, let's get this straight. Kennedy was the single biggest obstacle to Israel's nuclear ambitions. And he just happens to be taken out in a daylight execution, and then his successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, just happened to give Israel everything it wanted? Sure, just a coincidence. Now let's talk about Jack Ruby, born Jacob Rubenstein, the Dallas nightclub owner with deep ties to Jewish organized crime and the Israeli arms smuggling network. This was the guy who silenced Lee Harvey Oswald on live television, making sure the supposed lone gunman would never testify. What they do not want you to know is that Ruby had connections to Meyer Lansky, the Jewish mob boss who maintained direct ties to Israel and had been deeply involved in international arms trafficking. In fact, Ruby was caught trying to smuggle weapons to the Haganah, the precursor to the Israeli Defense Forces. But again, we are supposed to believe he had no ulterior motives in taking out Oswald, just a grieving patriot, right? Then there is Permindex, the Swiss-based trade organization suspected of being a Central Intelligence Agency Mossad front. Jim Garrison, the only prosecutor to bring charges related to Kennedy's assassination, identified Permindex as a key financial vehicle behind Kennedy's murder. Louis Bloomfield, a Zionist lawyer with intelligence ties, sat on its board. Tibor Rosenbaum, a known Mossad financier, bankrolled the organization through his Geneva-based Banque de Crédit International. Clay Shaw, the only man ever prosecuted for Kennedy's assassination, was a Permindex board member. This was an intelligence operation masquerading as a business, and it had fingerprints all over the Kennedy hit. Even United States intelligence documents confirm that suspicions of Israeli involvement surfaced immediately after Kennedy's death. National Security Agency intercepts from November 25, 1963, show that Arab sources were already pointing to a Zionist conspiracy, explicitly linking Kennedy's murder to Ben-Gurion's fury over Dimona. The Central Intelligence Agency monitored Middle Eastern reactions and noted that accusations of Israeli involvement emerged within hours. Recently declassified documents revealed that Reuben Efron, a Jewish Central Intelligence Agency officer, was monitoring Oswald's mail before the assassination and later moved to Israel. No suspicious connections there, obviously, But of course, every single piece of Israeli-related information in the Kennedy files remains heavily redacted because transparency is overrated when the truth is this inconvenient. And then we have the most damning admission of all. On November 21st, 1963, just one day before Kennedy was shot, anti-Castro exile Homer Echevarria made a chilling statement. He told an informant, "Our new backers are Jews. As soon as we take care of Kennedy, the plan will move forward." The Federal Bureau of Investigation had this information. They did nothing. The Warren Commission saw this report and ignored it. How many smoking guns does it take before people admit the truth? To this day, references to Israeli intelligence remain the most heavily censored portions of the Kennedy files. Why? Is there still classified material related to a murder that happened in 1963? Because the truth is radioactive, Kennedy stood in the way of Israel's nuclear ambitions. Within months of his death, that problem was solved. Jack Ruby silenced the only man who could testify. Permindex laundered money for intelligence-backed assassinations. Meyer Lansky used his criminal empire as a conduit for Israeli operations. Homer Echevarria flat out admitted Jewish backing for the hit, and yet we are supposed to believe that Israel had no role whatsoever, that this is just another crazy conspiracy theory? Give me a break. If Kennedy had lived, Israel's nuclear ambitions would have been derailed. Its political influence in America would have been severely curtailed, and instead his assassination ushered in an era where United States policy bent to Israel's will. This was not a random act of violence, it was a coup. And just like every other major political event that benefits the global elite, the truth is buried under redactions, intimidation, and endless cries of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But the evidence speaks for itself. And the biggest lie ever sold to the American people is unraveling faster than they can cover it up.
I think they've been extremely unfair to you.
Who is they, though? We can't say they is,
corporate
can we?
press. I'm not using the. I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking.
It is
about
them, though, isn't it? I mean, because
No.
and because when you think about it, consider it.
The next clip is ready below. Welcome to After Show Carnage.